Well, hello again. Peter Saturday from Universal Dork, back again today to talk about one of my favorite films from the 1980s, a movie from 1989 starring the iconic and totally crazy Gary Busey, HIDER in the house. Yeah, look at that. You can see Busey right on the cover of this VHS here. He's totally spying through the window on Mimi Rodgers, a co-starring role with Busey at, quite possibly one of his most unhinged performances. I saw this movie way back in the day, and it has always stuck with me, probably because this is easily one of Gary Busey's best films and best roles. In my opinion, I would say that this is the ultimate Gary Busey movie. In fact, when they hit up Busey to star in this film, they wanted to have him meet with some sort of like therapists and stuff to kind of go through this type of character in the movie, which is kind of a person who's suffering from PTSD, who's been in and out of therapy for years and probably institutionalized for quite a while. And at the time when Gary Busey read the script, he said that it was an NAR film. No acting required. He felt that this character was in some way a version of himself that already existed. So he could just slide right into this role, and you can tell he was made to be this character here. So I think HIDER in the House is probably his best film, or at least I would say my favorite, alongside of Surviving the Game with Ice-T. I think that was maybe a 1995 film. That's one of my favorite action films, and that features Busey in a completely unhinged role that he was absolutely made for as one of the villains of that movie. So if you've never seen Surviving the Game, you should check that out, because that's one that I definitely want to get to on this channel pretty soon. So check that movie out so that when I drop that video, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about if you're not already a fan. Busey stars as a kind of psychologically troubled man in HIDER in the House. He's been in and out of therapy for years. I think he was institutionalized for a while when he was just a teenager, because when he was young, he actually murdered his parents because they were so abusive to him. He set his house on fire with his parents inside, and of course, he survived it, kind of planned the whole thing out. And then from that point on, he was never quite the same. He's got all these issues with anger. He's got cigarette burns all over his arm. And we kind of get a little introduction to him in the very opening of the movie as to what he's going through, told through like pictures and voiceovers. And interestingly enough, the teenage version of Busey's character, who he plays as Tom Sykes in this film, is actually voiced by his son, Jake Busey. So Gary's kind of in and out of therapy. This is one of his last sessions that he has to attend at the very beginning of the movie, and they show us right away that he's really not ready to be out in the public dealing with everyday life and people in general. He's still got a little something funny going on. He's got a lot of anger issues and maybe a little delusional and slightly paranoid as well. But he shows up for his last appointment with his psychologist and therapist, and they're basically kind of giving him an evaluation, and they deem him totally ready to interact and mingle in the real world. In fact, he's never got to come back again for another session of therapy. And he seems pretty excited about this, but also a little bit weary of doing this himself, because I think deep down inside, his character knows he's still pretty unpredictable and unhinged at heart. So Busey, of course, he's pretty ready for this adventure, this new step in life. And he kind of tells his therapist that he's decided the one thing that he wants, now that he's all done and he's all better mentally, is that he wants his own house. The only problem is he has no job, and he kind of just roams around all day and does nothing. So he gets this bright idea one day as he kind of wanders into this very wealthy neighborhood and sees this gigantic, beautiful mansion being made. It's got all of the construction workers there and stuff. They're all there, and he's kind of staring at it. And he decides after they all leave and go home for the night that he's going to peek around up there. Once he gets up into that attic, that he's essentially going to design himself a very shitty little studio apartment in there, and kind of walls himself in, with a little secret door that he can open. So he gets a bunch of plywood and wood, and he very neatly constructs this tiny little room in there where no one at all would suspect that he would be living. So he's kind of hanging around up there for a little while. He's feeling really good about life. He lives in a giant mansion now. And then lo and behold, this family buys the house and moves in, and it's Mimi Rodgers, her husband, and her two kids, a little boy and a little girl. Busey is immediately drawn to the family, probably because he had so many issues with his own family when he was young. So he's kind of looking for like a second chance to kind of redeem himself. and get maybe a second chance at a family. He's not upset one bit about this family moving in. In fact, he is very ready to mingle with them. He's just got to figure out the right way to do it. Now, this movie's basic story is that kind of trope that we've seen throughout the years, starting I think way back into like the 70s with a movie called Bad Ronald. I think that might have been one of the first films that features the person hiding in the walls. So family moves into a house, and like in Bad Ronald, he kind of does the same thing that Busey does here under some different circumstances. But we've got a lot of other films throughout the years that kind of utilize this premise. So HIDER in the House didn't invent that genre, but Gary Busey in the role here has most definitely perfected it. So I would say this is the best of the HIDERs in the House. We had a couple other films throughout the years like The Boy and The Boy 2, and then a very excellent film from New Zealand, spoiler alert, this film Housebound, that I highly recommend checking out if you like that genre. Of course, like People Under the Stairs kind of utilizes that as well. And that Klaus Kinski movie, Crawl Space, sort of utilizes that one as well. We've had like Barbarian recently. And also a really great little indie film that I saw, a shot on video film that I just saw last year called Hiding Henry. Really cool Portland filmmaker made that movie. Saw that at the Hollywood Theater here, and that utilized a lot of the kind of tropes and premises that you would see in HIDER in the House, but only adds kind of a new flavor to it. So definitely recommend Hiding Henry if you're into SOV stuff. Pretty cool new one. I think Lunchmeat's releasing that on VHS. But unfortunately, Busey has one problem right from the start, which is the family dog. Now, the family dog has a good sense of smell, and it smells Busey's stench all the way from downstairs immediately when they move in, and it runs all the way up the steps, and it knows exactly where he is, probably because, you know, Busey's body odor is probably pretty strong at that point. He probably hasn't showered for a while. And quite honest, this place that he's kind of walled himself into doesn't look like it has any sort of form of air conditioning. And it's too small for a man of his size and his age, obviously. So that dog is like onto him like flies on shit. And Busey lures the dog in there with some sort of like either like beans or like dog food. He's actually shown eating this stuff out of this can. It's like eating with like a hunting knife out of this can. I think he's actually eating Alpo dog food. And he lures the dog in there and then takes care of business. A very, kind of shocking moment of the film. He does away with the family dog. And then the dog is reported missing. The family's upset. Busey's kind of, a little bit, on the fence about what he did. But any shame that he has about, taking care of the family dog is pretty much forgotten pretty quickly because he has set his eyes on Mimi Rodgers. He appears to have some gigantic crush on her that's building up. So one night, Gary Busey's up in his little attic there, kind of looking out. There's a little like window door that he opens up, and he's kind of like looking out at the neighborhood. He's kind of like the neighborhood watch, he would like to think. He's kind of like the hawk in the eyes of the neighborhood. He's kind of making sure that everyone in the neighborhood is behaving. There's this really annoying neighbor that makes a couple of appearances that is hitting on Mimi Rodgers all the time. He's real creepy with the kids. Bruce Glover plays the role.
Oh, hi. Hi, I'm Gene Hufford. I live right here. I'm a next door to neighbor. Little housewarming gift. Pie, rhubarb. I made it myself.
Well, thank you very much.
Pool's nice too, huh? Uh-huh.
He's really great in it as this like kind of sleazebag neighbor that's coming around the mansion all the time, kind of poking his nose in people's business there. And Busey does not like that. And then later he's up there kind of, looking and patrolling the neighborhood from his little perch up there. It's like the neighborhood hawk. And he sees Mimi Rodgers below. She's deciding that she's going to go skinny dipping in their swimming pool. And Busey is quite pleased at what he's watching. And he also seems to have this sort of kinship with the children where he's very concerned about their well-being. So Busey decides what he needs to do is bug the entire mansion so that he can sit upstairs in his little wooden attic lair and listen to all of the family drama that's going on. And it's pretty quickly that he finds out that there is indeed a rift going on between Mimi Rodgers and her husband. He's one of those typical 1980s dads who's always concerned with work and no one can ever get his attention. Busey finds out pretty quickly that this guy is having an affair on Mimi Rodgers, something I can't believe anyone would ever do. So Busey devises a plan and exposes the husband as the cheating pig that he is. Mimi kicks him out of the house, and Busey decides that he's going to move in. Quite literally, he's already moved in, I guess, but he's going to move in on Mimi Rodgers and kind of be the knight in shining armor to hopefully replace the husband and become the new father of the family. Figures out that the little kid, the boy there, is getting picked on at school by probably one of the most annoying tween bullies that I've ever seen put to film. You gotta see this guy to believe it. It's unreal.
Just as Mrs. Patrick comes out, her doormat catches on fire.
Is this the dog do trick?
Dog do? No, it's a dog shit trick. You're new here, aren't you?
Yeah, me and my family just moved here.
Do they teach you to interrupt conversations you're not a part of?
No.
So why did you? I know why. It's got big ears.
So Busey arrives on the scene there, kind of times it out perfectly. He's sitting around on a bench at school, hanging around with the kids, and then witnesses the little boy from his house getting picked on right there, and he kind of waits for Mimi Rodgers to drive up, and then bingo, he's on it, and he kind of arrives on the scene, separates the kids, and introduces himself. And at that point, he kind of makes his way into the family's life. He does a couple little pretty nice things for the family. He kind of saves the little girl from possibly falling into the swimming pool. He arrives over at their house, kind of introduces himself. And at this point in time, it's kind of implied maybe that Mimi Rodgers and her, friend in the neighborhood that she hangs out with, it's kind of implied maybe that they think Busey's kind of hot.
Who is that? His name is Tom Sykes, and he lives in the neighborhood. And it's not what you're thinking, Rita.
Oh, what do you think I'm thinking?
I know what you're thinking.
And that's something I was kind of wondering watching this movie. I mean, does anyone out there think that, Gary Busey is hot?
If you decide that you don't want him, I'd be more than happy to take him off your hands.
Well, thank you, dear.
I've been really curious about that because this movie, they're kind of playing him up like he's kind of a hunk. And I've never actually thought of Busey in that way. So I would like to know from you guys out there, what do you think? Do you think Gary Busey's hot? I'm kind of confused on this because I guess he's pretty charming in this film. And at one point, that's the interesting thing here is you kind of end up rooting for him. You kind of want him to succeed in his plans because it seems like deep down inside of him, there's kind of a good guy there. But it's all being buried by all of this trauma and anger and rage that he still has inside of him. He even kind of gives the younger kid that's being bullied, he gives him some real innocent pointers on how to deal with a bully at school.
The minute you think there's going to be a fight, kick him as hard as you can right in the balls. You grab him by the hair, pop him with your elbow, take him down. Hit him once in the face, and make sure he doesn't get up, kick him with your shoe right in the mouth.
And of course, this doesn't go over real well with Mimi Rodgers. She's a little bit upset with him as he keeps kind of coming around, and it's becoming more apparent that he's a little bit unhinged himself. So even though he's kind of interjected between Bruce Glover's advances on Mimi Rodgers and kind of sent him running away with his tail between his legs, he's got a lot more to deal with, like an exterminator coming into the house. I think that there's rodents in the walls. Really, it's just Gary Busey making noises. Busey ends up getting himself into all sorts of fucked up scenarios where he is forced to kill people. And each time that he murders someone, he just starts becoming more insane and more crazy and more longing to be part of this family no matter what. So I don't want to give too much away about this film and how it all wraps up. But I will say, Gary Busey gives a fucking incredible performance and just makes this film such a fun thing to watch. It is so entertaining. And again, the way that they kind of endear you to Gary Busey's character and make you feel something for him. Part of me wanted to see him and Mimi Rodgers fall in love. Can you imagine that? But at the same time, one of the most insanely creepy things that could ever happen to someone or a family or yourself or me would be to realize that Gary Busey is hiding in your goddamn wall. So that alone is part of the brilliance of this film. But if you're a fan of Gary Busey and you're into his sort of, over-the-top roles that he's played over the years, this is hands down one of his best performances. So this Vestron VHS here, as far as I know, has never gotten an official DVD release. I may be wrong about that. I've never seen one ever before. And I think that HIDER in the House is in desperate need of a brand new fancy Blu-ray with some really great special features. There's probably a lot of really great info out there on HIDER in the House that they could gather. You know, interviews with Gary Busey, perhaps, even though I don't know if you've seen Gary Busey these days, but I follow him on Instagram and he is just really appears like he's gone off the deep end. So very perplexed about that. I hope that Gary's doing okay because I've always really liked him and I've always thought he was a highly underrated actor. They could maybe get Mimi Rodgers on here or the director as well. Now the director's got a couple other movies as well that I'm going to check out. There's one psychological thriller horror film with Raquel Welch. I think it's called Tainted Love. I actually ordered that off of eBay, the VHS, the other night. So I'm definitely interested to check out a little more from this director, Matthew Patrick. I think he only has like 4 or 5 other films, but hoping that a couple of his other movies will be just as good as HIDER in the House. I just had to talk about this film because I love it so damn much. It is a total 1980s gem of a thriller. So check this out. Let me know if you've ever seen this in the comments. And also, if you know of any other cool movies that involve people hiding in walls or hiding in houses like this. I know that film Parasite that was very popular utilized a very similar plot line as well to HIDER in the House. And if I remember correctly, I think that there was a film called 3 Iron, an Asian, foreign film that kind of utilized a similar premise as HIDER in the House. And I remember that film, if it's the one that I'm thinking of, was also a real spectacular movie as well. So let me know if there's any other movies that utilize this sort of premise of the person hiding in the house, a horror film or anything like that. Let me know in the comments about that because I really like this sort of genre of, horror film or thriller. All right, that's it for me today. I will see you next time.